left without asking anyone. Now, for local residents' identities, I asked them if the project balance their needs with beautification. People agreed. They thought that the project is making the historic city more beautiful, and they are becoming more proud of it. This is, for example, also the Shibani church, which was dilapidated. It was restored. It was converted into a gallery and a museum. So it's right in the heart of one of the oldest neighborhoods. So it has a lot of events, exhibitions, music, concerts, and so on. I asked one of the local residents about what goes on in the Shibani. He actually lives right beside the church. And that's what he told me. I usually dress in a jalabiya, not in pants. So he was a bit shy of going into one of the events. So I entered the Shibani to have a look around, and there was a concert. And they offered me a glass of hot soda, and I accepted. The parties there are so and so. He doesn't relate to them. He feels so out of place. I didn't even recognize the tiny foods. I tasted them. They are neat, look nice, but I didn't like them. So even the food that's served there does not relate to the local community surrounding the historic city. Now, for the timing of participation, that was really important. I kept probing with the planners. So what happened? What did you do for public participation? So there were these three primary stages. The first stage was the data collection stage, the strategy and the planning formation, and then implementing the project. What happened is that they did start by asking people a few questions. They stopped for a very long interval, and then at the end they came back and they remembered that there are people living in the historic city. One of the planners actually told me, in the beginning there was nothing called public participation in the project. It is the Germans who tried to feature this idea in the project. And the Syrians, as a result of the reactions of residents and the way they behaved with the project, also noticed that this issue is very important. This planner is actually referring to some vandalism that happened to the project. People were not happy with the way the project was going, and they were going in and doing some vandalism to where the project was going on. Another person told me that they highlighted the selectivity of who was participating. In the very, very first incidences, participation took various forms. There were meetings with interest groups, so they invited people. They did not announce to everybody that everybody knew that there was a project going on. They targeted certain groups. Communication with district clerks, makhatir, and things like that. Working or cooperating with some local representatives or local institutions. So they were selected. They actually did not address ordinary people. I was also confused because I talked to people in the afternoon and evenings, and then I talked to planners in the morning. The planners tell me we kept doing participation all the time, and the people kept telling me, no one talked to us. We don't know what's going on. So I sat one of the planners down, and I told her, I really need to understand what do you mean by participation. And here is what she told me. We started to build data that is specific to the old city on the basis of local residents' perceptions to a level you might say 60% technical analysis. The stone, the structure, the infrastructure. So they kept asking people about the infrastructure. Where are the old pipes? Because they were never documented. If someone is a stonemaker, they would ask them about details of making stone or wood and so on. For your information, the other 40% was demographic data. So there was really no public participation. She rationalized, they are the ones living in the old city and know where the blockage happens with regard to sewerage and know where all the issues are. You are unable to build data that is, if you don't take this information from them, this thing will cost you much more time. So they saw people as just a source of data. That's for them public participation. As for my conclusions, I saw the project, this is my personal opinion, building on this research, that it's causing actually a lot of struggles. The first problem they are dealing with is displacement. A lot of people are leaving the historic city and moving out. One of the planners confirmed this to me. He said the trend that is documented was that the action areas of the project, meaning Jdeide and Bab al-Nasrin particularly, are the areas that witnessed the heaviest exchange of property rights in 2002, and the heaviest in Bab al-Nasrin and are buying these old houses and converting them into restaurants, something along the lines of Amman and Heritage Budna in Jordan, and hotels. There are a lot of these hotels sprouting up around Aleppo. Actually, one of the planners confirmed this, and he said most of the real estate being exchanged is being exchanged for tourism purposes, not for residential purposes. The other struggle that I noticed was a socio-economic exclusion. Planners, on the one hand, they say we do not want to have tourism in the historic city. But residents, the ordinary people, I'm not talking about the entrepreneurs, they say we are interested in tourism, we benefit from tourism. So residents, the planners are resisting tourism development. The entrepreneurs who are supported by the political economic system are able to get around the system, but the ordinary citizens are still excluded from tourism and its benefits. The other, with regard to socio-economic exclusion, actually, one of the planners agreed with this observation. He said one of the things that seem to be worrisome over the long run is that by providing supply side rather than demand side subsidies, meaning the infrastructure, or than supporting the rehabilitation of the houses, the planners have pushed the lower end users of the spectrum in favor of people who can afford to speculate in those properties. What is also happening is a loss of distinctiveness as a result of homogenization of or standards, establishing standards and quality control. This is one of the areas where the project has not reached yet. And you can see it's chaotic, but it's lively. It's the authentic. This is the real thing. This is where people live, people express, like when they're happy, when there is a religious festival, they put these banners. It's how they have been for hundreds of years. This is the sanitized version, where everything is cleaned up, everything has the same wooden facade, everything looks nice and dandy. Also, the physical sustainability, this homogenization, this is again one of the facades where everything was cleaned up. What I also found worrisome is that this is, for example, a detail of where the original tiling on the street meets with the new pavement, and you can see how different it is. It has nothing to do with the historic character of the historic city from a design architecture point of view. It's not even the same color of stone or material or anything. This is also Sahib al-Hatabe, which has been, we don't have in this historic city a tradition of having huge public open spaces. We have smaller public spaces that are attached to mosques, to churches, to madrasas or institutions. What they did in Sahib al-Hatabe is that there was this tiny plaza that the planners demolished everything around it and made it into this huge plaza, and they bring artists who can paint and so on. And again, people have the same sentiments as the Shibani church. You're catering for tourists. This is not part of our culture. I'm not going to drag my wife and children and have them sit to be painted, face painted, or something like that. So it's really very much out of the context, the social-cultural context of the people of Aleppo. So with regards to place experience, I noticed that, the legibility was weak among residents and strong among planners. Compatibility was weak for residents, neutral for tourists, but planners thought it was strong. So there is a disjunct, if you compare the green and the orange, there is a disjunct between what the planners think and what the residents actually really need, or perceive, or experience. Again, place attachment is really weak among local residents, and the social interaction, I think it's very fragile between tourists and local residents, although from the perception of tourists, they really want this interaction. With regard to participation, I saw residents are perceived as a data source. They are selected, invited to participate. They are informed, they are not empowered. Everybody tells them something will happen, but no one informs them at the beginning or engages them really. And there's an intermittent engagement. They tell them something, disappear, come back again, and so on. So there's no consistency. Their needs, the technocrats assess people's needs. There's no response to their actual needs. And there's all supply-side development that's actually driving people out of the historic city instead of keeping them in. As for their identities, the standardization and the homogenization is killing old Aleppo. And then it's actually suppressing local identities from that place. And in my opinion, there are very minimal choices for local residents. You either comply with Decision 39 or you move out of the historic city. So this is, for those of you who come from a planning background, this is from the 1960s. It's a classical scale for gauging public participation. So the first 3 stages, manipulation, therapy, and informing, we call them non-participation. We don't consider them actually participation. The second stage, where you inform, consult, and placate, is called tokenism. And then actual participation is when you give people the power to make their decisions. That's when you partnership with them, when you delegate power to them, tell them, you know, you have the power to do this and that and change in the historic city, and let them have the control. When you decentralize, that's when you achieve public participation. In my opinion, Aleppo stands somewhere there. It's at informing. It can jump up, but it's definitely threatened to go a lot down. So this is the model I proposed in the beginning. What I argued for, in order to be able to preserve a city like Aleppo, is to link residents and tourists together, and to link them also to planners using collaborative planning, where you balance the needs of residents and tourists, where you really cater for local identities and respect them, and where you give people choices. If you want to stay in the historic city, feel free to stay. If you want to move out, feel free to move out. If you want to stay, you have choices as well as how you can preserve your house, or how you can work with us to preserve your house. So this is what I argue for, is that collaborative planning helps us to preserve the life within the historic city. Thank you.